never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi guys, welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Today I've got the honor and privilege to interview Tim Heale. Tim Heale is a man with an amazing background, much of it in the UK military. And he's a man who I could have already continued the preamble, the talking just for hours. So you're lucky that we're actually recording because this man is just so cool to talk to. He is a man who has been a hard man in the military. And he is a man who has achieved a lot in his life. Yet he has recognized that ultimately we hard men need particular care and we need to be looked after and we need to learn how to look after ourselves. And that is something that many of us don't do well or don't do at all. So I'm so excited to talk to Tim, who is like me there to demystify mental health problems and help us men to come out of our shell and actually deal with the issues that we are facing deep inside. Tim, thank you very much for the work you're doing, and I'm so delighted to have you on my show.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, brilliant. Now, you were a long time in the military. Was that always your dream? Do you come from a military family where it was normal to serve?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I started out life up until the age of sort of 10 and a half, I guess it was, somewhere around about there. I was always going to be a farmer.
All right.
So I was going to follow him. So my granddad was in the army and my father was in the army, but they worked on farms, and I was born on a farm and kind of grew up around farms and one thing and another. So up until the age of sort of 10 and a half, I was going to be a farmer. So along come the 11 plus, which was an exam for going into the next school to see whether you're good enough to go to grammar school. No, I wasn't particularly good at school. I was put off at school at an early age. So
interesting.
I failed the 11 plus fairly miserably. And then I was going to go to an agricultural boarding school. And I went to take the entrance test for that around about 10 and a half, because we go up at 11 into the secondary school. And I failed that miserably as well.
It only shows how bizarre these kind of exams are, isn't it? I was a bit like you around about that age. It's only later that I suddenly found the button to turbocharge and showed my brain. Until then, my brain was still somewhere, I don't know, hiding. Well, so what happened then?
So after that, I mean, I thought I can't be a farmer then because I ain't got. I'll go and join the army.
Well, but that was which age now? We're talking 11. That's a very early decision making.
So 11, I decided that I was going to go and join the army. So at the age of 13 and 3/4 was the first time you could go and apply to join the army as a boy soldier. Right. So I went along to the recruiting office, sat down, did some tests, and the recruiting sergeant came and he says, "Son, if you can't do better than this, you've got no chance of getting in the army." What? So I failed that miserably too. So I went away. I took a long, hard look at myself over that weekend. The following week, I went into school and I actually went to every single lesson. I spent an awful lot of time playing hooky. Half of the teachers thought I was a new student because they hadn't seen me.
Okay, now that explains a lot, man. That explains a lot.
So for about 8 months, I knuckled down. I mean, I was a changed person because I saw my life disappear. I mean, it was a rough school I was in. A lot of the kids in my sort of stream, I was in the bottom stream because I just didn't go to school, and they weren't bothered with us because we were toe rags basically, and half of them were going to end up in jail and I didn't want that. So I worked hard. I went back sort of about 8 months later with a mate And same recruiting sergeant was there. He said, "You've done something. I've done a lot of learning since the last time." He said, "All right, lads, sit down. There's a test. I've just got to pap out for a bit. I'll come back in when it's time to finish the test." So my mate gave us some of the answers, and I managed to secure a place as a junior soldier in the Royal Anglian Regiment. And on the 5th of August 1974, I turned up at the Depot of the Queen's Division to start my training as a young 16-year-old, and never looked back. And on the 4th of April 2018, I retired.
Oh, wow. And what a life you would have lived, because prior to that, there was not so much happening really with regards to war. So after the Second World War, there was some involvement.
You say that. We got into a few scrapes.
Oh, yeah.
In Northern Ireland.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
For us.
Oh, absolutely. No, I was saying prior to that. So a lot of people in the 50s, 60s were very war tired. There was not much for a professional soldier unless you were in more specialized areas, i.e. SAS, etc., to go to Malaya or to other areas. There was not so much. But then really the 70s, 80s, 90s, suddenly things started kicking off. And you were in the midst of it
as well.
Oh, hell yes, and keeps going. A gift that keeps giving. Yeah, great. It's the madness of the world, but that is we will cull that a little bit. Tim and I can talk political affairs until the cows come home. Okay, so we promised. We made a call for today's men's health that we're actually talking about it. But having said that, you say yourself already, you were a young man who grew up on a farm, so therefore physical hard labor was not unknown to you. Being in the bottom stream, bullying and those kind of things were probably not unknown to you.
Oh, it went hand in mouth with it. I mean, it was a tough old school. I mean, it was. I grew up just outside London in one of the new towns. It was an old town, but it became a new town, which was Hatfield in Hertfordshire. So lots of East London and North London people moved out into the suburbs after the war. And with that, they brought their toughness. I mean, a tough old bunch of Londoners. And for us kids, I mean, they taught us how to fight before they taught us how to walk. Because once you stepped outside the front door, somebody was going to sort of pick on you, and you had to be able to look after yourself. You was going to get a clump anyway. You get the scrapes. I mean, so many scrapes as a kid. Yeah, it was a tough bringing up. I don't regret it. It was fun. I mean, got caught by the old bill several times for scrumping and and getting into trouble with the police.
Oh boy.
Managed to get away with it most of the time.
And again, this was nowadays it's completely not. People can't get their head around that. Then that was normal. That was.
My mother never knew where I was. Left the house in the morning after breakfast and wouldn't see us till dinner time. And we were out all day, every day.
So that was basically, you were the little rebel out there. As a rebel, you don't do well in the forces. How did that happen?
You do well in the forces, you don't do particularly well at school.
Okay, let me rephrase that. You do well in certain parts of the forces, especially where aggression is highly, highly recommended. Absolutely. Having said that, I was more referring to your attitude towards order, towards superiors, towards taking an order and following it, regardless if it makes sense to you or not. That is what I'm doubting that you were initially so good at.
Well, I mean, the army does know how to encourage you to follow the line.
Okay, I hear you.
I mean, that first 6 weeks in the army was pretty brutal, pretty tough.
Okay.
And you had two. You stepped out of line. You had two choices. You could accept the sergeant's punishment, or you could go on orders and they take money off you. You take the sergeant's punishment, and that's round the back, and you get a bit of a knuckle sandwich. and you soon learn to sort of toe the line very
Okay.
quickly.
Okay. Fair call. So
It
Which-
worked.
so that was your basic training, and your then advanced infantry training. Was it infantry, or did you go into any
I was,
other branch?
I was an infantry soldier pretty much all the way through.
Right.
So,
Who did you want to become within the hierarchy? What was your dream? Were there any dreams, or were you just sort of floating a bit initially?
not initially. I just wanted to have a great life. I mean, it was mainly getting away from outfield.
Fair call.
So,
Fair call.
So the age of 16, I left home, and I've never been back. So and I've had a great life. I mean, I have done some amazing things. I've been to amazing places. There's a few I almost haven't come back from on several occasions, but yeah, I've managed to, as I progress through the years, I've managed to sort of know how to take liberties, shall we say. I mean, I've been a fantastic liberty taker, and know how to play the system, and yeah, to the benefit of other people as well. I mean, that was one of the things when I became a welfare officer. In fact, going back when I was in PSYOPS, I had lots and lots of opportunity because we deployed out quite regularly. We came back and we had lots of time off. I just managed to get away and do a lot of adventurous training. So when I became a welfare officer, I turned that around and was able to organise an awful lot of adventurous training for the lads, which meant me going away with them most of the time.
Excellent.
Method in the madness.
Absolutely. Well, which is beautiful. I mean, that is your own story, and you managed to bloom, to really thrive in the UK military, which is beautiful. Having said that, I mean, you were deployed, and by the time the first deployment came around, can I understand that was Northern Ireland?
Northern Ireland, 1977.
Yeah.
My company, I was in A Company to Royal Anglian. We were posted to the Ballymurphy in West Belfast. At that time, it was pretty hot. We were right in the middle of a Catholic area. We during that tour, we had major incidents pretty much every single day, whether it was a riot at kickoff, whether it was rocket attacks, whether it was shootings or IED bomb blasts. We had it all. We had to get other units in to help us out because we were fragged. We would, if we went in a 6-day cycle, so you spend 2 days patrolling on the streets. You would spend 2 days then in sangars on the camp, so you're doing guards all the time, and then you'd do 2 days on QRF, Quick Reaction Force. So by the time you get around to the next rotation of the 2 days patrolling, you'd had 2 days on QRF where you'd been crashed out most of the time anyway because of stuff's kicking off. So it was a challenging time. It was a very, very dangerous time. I was blown up. I should have been shot, and I wasn't, because it's a funny thing. During the pre-deployment training, we practiced patrolling skills all the time, and we went out in sort of it was a 4-man brick within a 12-man section. So when we went out the ground, there was 12 of them went out, but we were in 4-man blocks. So we moved sort of independently, 1 foot on the ground as such, because it was so dangerous where we were. When we were doing training, the section commander would say change, and we'd swap sides. When we got out there for the first 2 months, we didn't do that. We didn't do it once. And I was always at the front on the right. The section commander was the front on the left. I had a guy called Terry behind me, and he had Chris behind him. So we came out of one area called the Moyard. We came down into Spring Hill Avenue. And as we came around the top of the road, he said, change. Thought nothing of it, swap sides. We hadn't gone sort of 50, 70 metres down. We got 2 Armalite rounds came at us. One went through his groin and out his backside. The other went through somebody's kitchen. I fired 2 rounds back, took out a stained glass window of the church at the bottom of the road. But the first round must have whizzed past the shooter's ear because he left the weapon behind and scarpered.
But that was normal then anyhow, wasn't it? They often would try to hide the weapon and then melt into the population. So I mean, that was for them standard practice. But to drop it there and then, okay, well done, man.
It must have scared. Anyway, we found a weapon, so it turned out to be an M1 carbine.
Right. Yeah. Well,
but
man.
That was the first time we was really in conflict, and
did you lose
a couple of weeks later? I was blowed up.
I was about
we
to
lost
say
a few guys on that tour, yeah. So it was
the 70s.
Yeah, that was late 77, so late 70s.
Was there? How did you guys deal with that? With the fact
just man
that
up and get on.
Exactly.
Exactly. There was no, like nowadays you get what we call TRIM, which is trauma incident management. And that's the way of dealing with these traumatic incidents. Back then, there was none of it. It was just here, have one of these. What's that? Oh, it's a man up bill.
Exactly.
And just get on with it. And that's what I've pretty much done most of my career. And I've seen an awful lot of action. In my time, particularly in sort of latter years where I was deployed out with 15 UK Psychological Operations Group, where I did 7 operational tours. I did 2 tours of Kosovo. I did Macedonia when 9/11 happened. 5 months later, I found myself in Kabul for 6 months. Then I went to Iraq, and then I did 2 more tours of Afghanistan, which were quite tasty tours. I mean, there was a lot went on. The tour in 05/06 was more of a shooting war. The Taliban would take us on and try and shoot us up. They weren't that successful at it. We were better than they were, basically. And then when I went back in 8/9, it was more IEDs, and they were bloody dangerous. So from that point of view, seen an awful lot of action, one way or another.
And I think there are 2 aspects there. On the one hand is the direct impact on you as a man, and every man is different. We all can either. I mean, for some of us, it washes off of our backs as like nothing, and you could argue that might be more. Maybe the genetic makeup of a sociopath, of someone who has got not as many emotions, or not a typical emotional response. Well, that's 1 in 100. I have got that response. If you, however, look at the other 99%, luckily we are not so cold-blooded. So some of us take it harder than others. Where if someone was taking the death of a mate or the immediate explosion, they were physically not so harmed, a bit scraped up, but mentally they really started to wonder. Was that accepted? How was that dealt with at that time? 70s, 80s?
70s, 80s was really tough. I mean, we went to Berlin. We had 2 years in Berlin, which was awesome. From 78 to 80, it was the absolute best tour I think we've ever done. It was terrific. I mean, some of the duties were great. I mean, the British military train, I think, was one of the best duties. We used to get what we call flag tours, where we go. We had a big Opel Imperial limousine, where 4 of us would be done up in our best uniforms, which is that one there, number 2 dress. The one on the end there. and we drive through Checkpoint Charlie, and it's funny. You go from West Berlin into East Berlin through Checkpoint Charlie. It was literally like going from a colour film to a black and white film. And when you went through, you picked up a tail. You had either an East German tail or you had a Russian tail, and they would follow you around all day. And you had a few places of interest to go and see, and just it was just making a presence in East Berlin, which was great fun. Some of the other duties weren't particularly good. I mean, Rudolf Hess was still alive at the time. So you guard in Spandau prison, and for a young sort of private soldier, you was up on the towers. And if you were caught looking down into the yard at Hess when he was out taking exercise, he would bubble you and you get into trouble. So that was crazy. And then you got normal guards on the camp and stuff like that. So that's just every day.
In all fairness, people might think, well, Germany, come on, forget it. I mean, that is not in the deployment. That is nothing. Having said that, I mean, those late 70s, early 80s, I mean, at any one time, we expected on a Tuesday afternoon around 2, the Russian might come through the Fulda corridor.
Absolutely.
And then and then Pershings from one side, and then the others, and then we were always ground zero. I mean, your survival in such a case was, minutes, seconds.
Well, they reckon that Berlin Brigade, their life expectancy was about 6 hours.
That's right, exactly right. So we
laugh
about it now, but I mean that was the fact.
A bit longer.
Yeah, well, a few minutes. Because, I mean, ultimately, this was the 80s. This was a very, very real threat
right
to
in
us.
The middle of the Cold War.
Absolutely. So let's
and
not be silly
Cold War
here.
Days, I mean, to be honest, I mean, the times of the British military in Germany were awesome. I mean, when I joined the army, it was about 160,000 strong.
Oh, wow.
And we had about 100,000 troops in Germany.
I had no idea. I mean, after all, you had a sector of West Germany that you were responsible for, so no surprise there. Plus then a quarter of Berlin. Oh, my goodness.
And you had lots and lots of opportunities to do adventurous training, do sport. I mean, we played rugby a lot during the winter. We were able to go skiing. So there was sports afternoons. So great times. Nowadays, it's a lot different. I mean, the British Army is half the size or under half the size that it was when I joined. Nowadays, you're constant on operational tours, or you're prepping to go on ops, or you come back and you from an operation and you're getting ready to go again. And it's not a huge amount of fun nowadays in the army. It's the opportunities to go and do adventurous training are limited. Sports afternoons more often than not are cancelled because you have to do something else.
Interesting. Okay.
It's just, they do know how to take the fun out of it nowadays. There's not an awful lot of fun in being in the military anymore.
Okay.
And I think that's a detrimental effect to people's mental well-being as well.
There's no doubt about that. Having said that, there are not too many jobs where you're paid to have fun. Okay, let's be clear about that. So some people who are listening could argue, well, come on, that is a bit of a strange attitude. Having said that, you and I know that you can't live under the tension of being pre-deployment, deployment, coming off deployment, for crying out loud, the tension, the emotions, the all that. You need to decompress. You need to actually have safe ways to do so. And that is where the sport comes in. So we need to say that for the listener who thinks, this arrogant sod here wants to have sport that we pay for.
Well, let's put it into a little bit of perspective. Over the period of 10 years, I did 7 operational tours of 6 months at a time.
Wow. Yeah. Exactly.
So 10 years, 7 operational tours. So that's 3.5 years of my life deployed.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's and that's the deployed time. That's not counting the 6 months pre-deployment training to build up to deploy out. So in 10 years, I did 6 years of pre-deployment or actually operational training. And then when you come back, you've got the we call it decompression, but you've got the download of what you've just been spending 6 months doing. So you've got a month before you can go off on a month's leave. So yeah, it was a tough 10 years, and it was a tough 10 years, particularly on the family.
I was about to say, was Mrs. Wright already on the scene, or?
Yeah. I was married through for most of my career. We were married for 23 years. She got cancer for the second time, and she died in 2006.
Sorry to hear
and
that.
then I deployed out again, and that was tough. She died, and then I deployed out, and it was, I don't know if it was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. It's what I did, and I jumped on the next rotation and went straight back out, leaving my daughter to deal with selling the house because I didn't want to live in the house anymore. She had already moved out, but she was close by to be able to help sort it out while I was away. Came back, I signed the papers, and then I moved into the mess. I've since remarried, so I've now been married coming up for 13 years.
Beautiful.
So
beautiful.
The current Mrs. Heale, she went through one deployment, and then I had 8 years as a welfare officer. So she supported me in that. And I used to commute into London every day, so that was tough.
I think there's
that takes a toll on your mental health, I can tell you.
I think there is not one soldier story that does not highlight the pressure that is on any relationship there, not just from the obvious, the trauma and maybe those kind of things, but also from the sheer fact that you're separated for months and months at a time. So it needs to
the funny thing with me is I'll be away for 6 months. I'll come home and the whole house would be redecorated, which was okay. It kept her busy, kept her out of mischief. I came back from Iraq, and in Iraq for 6 months. I walked into the house. I had to go back out again to make sure I'd walked into the right house, because walls had changed. There was a downstairs bathroom. The kitchen had been totally redone. The whole house had changed.
Excellent.
Okay.
And
within 10 minutes, it's like I hadn't been away. And that was the same every time I came back from a deployment. Within 10 minutes, I just slotted into, and it was like I just hadn't been away.
What kept you going? So you speak a lot about the positive sides, and obviously you reminisce a little bit about the good times that you have had. There would have been not so good times. There would have been not so good times as a younger man, when you were not sure of yourself. The first time that you were heading into combat, the first time that you were blooded. I mean, what were these times like? How did you deal with those feelings?
It's really odd. It's a mindset, and I think that's what the British military is really, really good at, is putting you into the right frame of mind when you deploy out. I can remember the first time I was a young lad. I was 18. We went through, I think it was about 5-6 months of pre-deployment training. So we start off 6 months out, and we do low-level skills, and we build the skills up, and then we work in as teams, and then we go down and do the village training where you're patrolling around villages, and they're chucking all sorts at you, and you're having riots, you're doing everything. I mean, generally the training tends to be a lot tougher than the actual deployments themselves. The deployments tend to be spread out longer. I mean, during the training, it's all bang, 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 bang.
I see.
Right. And when you're actually deployed out, it's a lot more relaxed. I mean, it's more time to do stuff.
Yeah.
And then you react. Your training kicks in when something happens, and you don't think about it until generally after. I came back in 1977. We had lots and lots of incidents. We had lots and lots of shootings, lots of rocket attacks. We had riots and all sorts. I came back on R&R for a week during that deployment. I was walking up the town with my mum. The car backfired and I'm taking cover. She's walking up the road talking to me. I looked round thinking, you silly sod. I went to join my mum. She hadn't even noticed I'd met him. But I just clean jumped over this fence and taken up a position.
Absolutely.
But that was the training kicking in.
And that's beautiful. So let's not be stupid here. You are trained as a killer. You're trained to take lives. You're trained to be a hard man. And then you're coming home and you're supposed to be, ding, that's it. Okay, cool. You're now here. You're now the loving husband. You're now the doting, whatever, the other roles that you have got. How the hell did you manage that? I think that is
I don't know. For me, it's. I think it's just the normality of coming back into a very familiar surroundings. Yeah. Although they'd changed.
Fair call. Hey, you need to spice things up. Come on, that's.
But just for me, it was. I never had a problem dropping back into normal daily life. I know lots and lots and lots of people that struggle with it. But for me, it never ever seemed an issue. I've always found it easy just to switch off. We're back home, back to normal. What do we do next?
You say you were injured during your times. Was that scrapes or was that?
I was blown up in 1977, where I sustained a back injury, and it caught up with me after the tour, and I ended up being in hospital for 6 months.
Wow.
My back just collapsed, and I was on traction for a month and morphine and all sorts of things, and then I ended up doing, say, 3 months in hospital. Then I moved to a rehabilitation unit. I spent 3 years there, 3 months there, and then I never got out of inters. I moved from beginners into inters, and I never managed to get to advance. So I ended up being downgraded for quite a few years until I sort of worked my way through it. And I still suffer now. I mean, some days I can't even get out of bed. I'm constantly in pain with it. I try my best not to take painkillers unless I really need them, and occasionally I have to. This time of year is not great. The winter time, it doesn't help.
Oh goodness!
But I've also buggered up my knees, my back, my shoulders.
I was about to say, carrying about the same amount that you weigh on your back, and then jumping over big hurdles and obstacles. Yeah, your body will say.
I had the opportunity to weigh my kit. I was deploying out onto a foot patrol, and I went because I was the job I did. I had to latch on to other people, so I was going out with was 3 Commando Brigade, with one of the companies in one of the areas, and I had to go through Bastion to get there. So at the airhead, they got weighing scales. So I thought I'll just weigh my kit. So I put everything that I carried onto the scales. So my body armor, my day sack, my helmet, weapons systems, 42 kilos.
Exactly.
I'm going out on a foot patrol carrying 42 kilos.
Exactly.
I mean, that's half my body weight again.
My point.
And then I wonder why my back's bits,
Exactly.
and my knees and my hips are shot to bits.
And I think that's the big problem, isn't it? That there's a price to pay for all those things that you do when you're a younger man.
I wasn't that younger. This was 2000. This was 2006. So
touche.
I'm 64 now, so I was in my mid-50s. So
oh goodness. Well, fair call. Now going back,
I was still playing a bit of rugby at 56.
Good man, good man. What about what about signs and symptoms of PTSD? You would have gone through a lot of shit in your time. Did that ever catch up with you?
It does actually. It didn't until I left. I left in 2018. 2020, I was having a bit of a wobble. And because I'd done all that time as a welfare officer, I understood and I recognised the system, the symptoms that I was going through. Yeah. So I went to the doctor. He signed me over to the shrinks, and I had about 4 sessions with some psychologists or whatever they call them. For me personally, it didn't work, and the reason it didn't work is because they were civilians and they didn't understand what I'd been through. They didn't understand my issues. The way I got through it is I contacted a couple of mates that had been through the same stuff that I'd been through, and we went and had a beer and a chat, and I kind of got it sorted out, and and I'm okay.
And that's the interesting bit. I think that is one of the proofs that the opposite to a mental health problem is connection. There's a beautiful study out there looking at the symptoms of PTSD in soldiers that had deployed to the Falkland War. And because it was sort of 8,000 miles away from the UK, when this rather short but very intense war was over, some of the troops got repatriated via ships. So they just were put on there, and it took them some weeks to get back. Yeah. And the rule on the ships was that they only had to be there for the morning formation, and then the rest of the day they could do whatever they wanted. If they wanted to be alone, they could, but they were encouraged to talk with others, etc. So that was happening for weeks on the ships. Another bunch of the soldiers had the privilege, quotation mark, to be flown back. So pretty much within 48 hours, they were back on UK soil. And there was a dramatic difference in the amount of PTSD symptoms in those two groups. Those people who were able to talk had a tremendous amount of deep decompressing, deep breathing, etc. And actually, the incidence of PTSD, by definition, by the psychiatric definition, was significantly reduced. So that is something that was known in what was Falklands was 82 thereabouts.
Yeah, 1982, 40 years ago now.
Yeah,
We've
exactly.
Just had the anniversary last year.
Yeah, that's right. So, there you go. So 82. So we knew it already then. Having said that, was that taken on by the UK military? No.
It was only starting to be taken on around about 2002, 2003, thereabouts.
What was
After
the
we got involved,
transformation? What was the
I think the there was a colonel in the army that saw how the Royal Marines have been doing what we call trim for quite a long time, for about 20 years.
Right.
And he tried to bring it across into the army. His name was Skid Dorney. In fact, he died just a few weeks back, or a couple of months ago. But he got this trim up and running for the army. And it takes a bit of time, but now the army sort of fully embraced it. And when you're deployed out, if you're involved in a traumatic incident of anything, they'll deploy out a trim team. So you've got a coordinator and some practitioners. They'll go in 72 hours after the incident's happened. They'll assess everybody that's involved, whether they're directly involved or on the peripheries. They'll work out who needs to be have a one-to-one, who needs a group briefing, or who needs an overall briefing of what's the situation. And then they assess each of the individuals, and then they'll let them know that basically it's not unusual to have the sort of feelings that you'd like to have, lack of sleep, running through the thing over and over again in your mind and stuff like that. And they encourage people to talk to their peers that have been involved with it. And then they come back in at the 4-week period, sort of a month later. They'll re-interview everybody, see how things have moved on, how people have been coping. And then any time during that period, if people are struggling, then they'll signpost them onto specialist help.
Nice.
And then say they've done a reassessment, and then they'll come back in again at the 3 months period and reassess everybody again to see how they cope. And generally that helps with getting over these traumatic incidents. That's great. That's all well and good until you come to guys that are in patrol bases or FOBs,
exactly,
where they are having multiple traumatic instances on a daily basis for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, for those out there listening, a FOB or patrol base is often in absolute middle of nowhere, where you're under the worst conditions deployed, and where you are and you might be mortared or shot at. Once daily, that is sort of as regular as rain in some parts of the world. So unfortunately, that is what we're talking about.
I was in one patrol base doing some work, and they called it the North Wall, and they got a load of weapon systems all set up on this North Wall, and occasionally they'd have a rocket attack. Somebody would fire an RPG. The whole camp rushed to the North Wall, trying to jump on either jimpies, 50 cows, javelins, all to have a go back. It was quite amusing, and then they all ran out there and all went to have a brass up with whoever shot an RPG.
Oh, please.
Very rarely did they get anybody, but it was so funny the way it happened.
At the same token, you are often in situations where you certainly can't control it, and you get shot at, and you're often in environments where you can't see the shooter, and it's powerless. You feel powerless, you feel frustrated, you feel anything. You try to do some patrols, and you might get lucky one day, but more often than not, you probably can't find the people. So how do you deal with that? This is a frustration, a tension, a powerlessness, a hopelessness to a certain degree. Is that not something that comes onto many soldiers who are operating under these conditions?
Possibly does. For me personally, I have a way of dealing with it. And it is it's a difficult mindset to put yourself into. But the way I look at it is, if I can't do anything about it, there is no point in worrying about it.
God
If
grant
I
me
can
the
do
serenity.
something about it,
Yeah.
then I do something about it.
Gotcha.
It's a difficult mindset to get yourself into, but it works for me. It works.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can't do anything about it, I'll just dismiss it. I can't. There's no point in worrying about it.
Okay.
If I can do something about it, then I'll go and do it. And that's the mindset I've always had. It's like I've always had a half glass full. My glass is always at least half full or overflowing. I've always been a positive person. I always look to take a positive out of a desperate situation. I mean, it's quite. I mean, I was in one particular place and we were under heavy fire, and there was not a lot we could do about it, and I just found it really funny.
And it's it's the humor that under those circumstances that sustains you,
and it's infectious as well,
isn't it?
sit there giggling like a little schoolgirl, and you got mortar bombs landed in the compound.
Yep,
that's exactly. You can just keep undercover. There's nothing you can do about it.
Exactly.
Wait until it stops and then get out.
Oh God. Oh no, I hear you. I hear you. And obviously you're are a particular mold. You're a man who is taking the life in its stride. Many others don't. Yeah. And especially now we see it dramatically in the United States, but also in our preamble you mentioned it in the UK, that we see a wave of suicides that that are affecting veterans. Why the hell do you think that is? Here we are trying to get better in dealing with critical incidences, yet seemingly we are failing as a society. We are failing our soldiers. Why is that?
Yeah. I think, and this might wind a few people up, but I think the government, and it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Conservative, Liberals, Labour, they use and abuse us. You take any incident, right, a national crisis over Christmas. The border force decided they were going to go on strike. Who do they call in? The military. The vaccine rollout. Who do they call in? The military. Because the NHS employs around about 1.1 million people. The army at the moment is around about 80,000. Out of that 80,000, there's probably 20,000 that are on the biff, that are downgraded, can't deploy. And out of the ones that you can deploy are in jobs where they don't deploy. So, but it comes down to the same units all the time that are picked up to go out and aid the civil power. Take the nurses, for instance, or let's look at a fireman. 1977 or 76, I was on a fireman strike. Firemen earn more money than what a soldier does. Yet we were covering for them in Green Goddesses. Now, the Green Goddess itself, the platform that's on the old Bedford RL is rubbish. But the pump on it is something else. It's better than most civilian pumps. It's a terrific pump on the Green Goddess. That's why they kept them for so long. The platform, the Bedford RL itself was an awful thing to drive. But the pump was brilliant. So they used the military in everything. So they currently got the military deployed out all over the place. We were in Africa, we're in Ukraine or on the border of Ukraine in Poland. We're in Estonia. We've got some troops in Germany. We're scattered around the world. So the army is stretched.
Mm.
So those that aren't deployed are being fragged. And they earn an awful lot less than the people they're covering for. And all they want to do is cut the numbers. Yes, they give us some money for some new equipment. But equipment is down to the cheapest bidder.
Mm.
I mean, that's why I ended up carrying 42 kilos of kit on a foot patrol, which is, I mean, it's not a lot of fun, particularly in the heat.
I bet you.
The
question,
so
though,
they give us all this kit
sure.
to save our lives. I mean, the body armor itself weighs 20 kilos with the plates in it.
But Tim, that is, I can understand if that all frustrates a currently serving soldier.
It frustrates veterans as well to see what's happening to them.
I see what you mean.
I mean, I'm involved with a lot of veterans groups in this area.
Yeah.
They did the national census a while ago, and some of the figures have been released. In fact, they were released on Armistice Day, Remembrance Sunday, or the Remembrance Week. And there are two hot spots in the UK where there are clusters of veterans. There's Richmond in North Yorkshire, and then the biggest cluster of veterans is in Gosport and Fareham, where I live. So we're blessed in this area that we've got lots of veterans groups.
Right.
In fact, I've been over to one this afternoon, which is a veterans outreach support, where they had a drop-in centre, where they get lots of different agencies in that are out there to help veterans.
Is that funded by the government, or is that funded by
sources? It's a charity. I mean, the government don't fund anything for veterans. There are around about 2,000-ish service charities that are out there for veterans in the UK. And none of them get any funding from central government.
Wow. Is there...
And get this. I mean, I get my army pension and they're taxing me on it. I get taxed on my pension. Thanks.
Okay.
44 years under the colours and they tax my pension.
Wow.
So I'm paying my own pension.
Wow. Okay. Okay. No, I understand already the frustration. If you were to compare yourself with Veterans Affairs in the United States or with the system that helps veterans over there, are there links? Are there cross links? Do you guys talk to each other, or is there?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to quite a lot of veterans from across the pond. I mean, they've got the VA, the Veterans Administration. They got the VA hospitals and all the rest of it, and that's all funded by the government, as I understand it.
Yet over there we see the same problem. We see the same of
they're inundated. They're under pressure.
I see.
Where again over here, our charities are under pressure to deliver. There's one charity over here, Combat Stress. They've got a place up in the Midlands where they get veterans in with complex PTSD, but they only look after them for 2 years and then they have to let them go to be able to get some more in. So my mate used to go to them, and they used to go there for a week of respite. He had some real problems. He was the guy that took the bullet for me, basically. But it wasn't that. There was some other stuff that went on that affected him, and he's been affected for years. He died a couple of years back. Cancer got him in the end. But yeah, he was properly messed up. So the charities have limited resources. I mean, it was great during the times of when we were in Afghanistan. We were in the news a lot. The charity Help for Heroes got in millions. And then they helped out at some other charities. The RBL still struggle at getting enough funds in each year. I mean, it drops each year because people ain't got money. And then you see what's going on in this country. I don't know whether you see it where you are, but the migrant crisis. We had nearly 46,000 illegal migrants arrive in this country on boats across the Channel last year. 46,000 have been put up in hotels. There are something like 420 hotels that we're paying for. We're spending around about £7-8 million a week on hotels for illegal migrants that have come into this country with no documentation, and the government is doing sod all apart from putting them up in hotels and giving them money. And they're doing very little to get rid of them. Instead of what they do is they pick them up in the middle of the Channel. Half the time they're picking them up on the French side of the Channel. Why can they not go and land them back in France? That's what they should be doing with them. That's where they came from, drop them back in France. But they're not. They bring them in. The border force is like a taxi service down there. The lifeboat is like a taxi service. It's that bad that the lifeboat crews are starting to complain that they've been called out constantly. I mean, these are volunteers. They're constantly going out, picking up illegal migrants and bringing them back in. It's not right. And then when you get, like, the cost of living in this country is going through the roof.
Absolutely.
People can't afford to put a heating on.
Well, indeed.
Pensioners are struggling. So
what would you do? Yeah, and then you're quite right.
I get a pension, I'm entitled to get nothing from the government.
Exactly. Oh, I feel the frustration, and that is so true. So it is, and it doesn't sound nice in liberal ears when you say, no, we need to be doing the good for everyone, but that should also include those people that have been there for you, and that implies that pensioners, that applies to the soldiers, that applies to all those people who worked in the public, the policemen who worked in the public system, often end up being spit from piss on and shit
as well.
You know, exactly. So you've got many strata of your society, those people that you really need when shit hits the fan. The moment that is all finished, they are no longer working, they're just thrown to the side. And that is what is so hard for me to accept. That is...
I mean, on the legal migrant side, I mean, last year, I did everything I could possibly do to get 3 interpreters that worked for me out of Afghanistan, because we left them behind.
Yeah, I know.
We actually left them behind. On that debacle in that August. So I had my local MP working on it. I pulled some strings with some other people I know. They managed to get them out of Afghanistan and into, one of them came out through Iran, and he was picked up by the British consulate there, and the other ones came out via Islamabad, and they were brought to the country. They were processed. They're put in hotels. They're still in hotels. One of them arrived in the November of 21, still in a hotel.
What's the unemployment rate at the moment in the UK?
Oh, we've got 1 million odd vacancies.
Oh, there you go. So, okay.
One of the guys, he's a doctor. He qualified in 2014. Been working as a a general practice doctor in Afghanistan ever since. He has had so much trouble registering with the General Medical Council. He can work, but he can't work until he gets his registration with the GMC. Got a job waiting for him. A local practice will take him on. His wife is an experienced midwife, a very experienced midwife. Again, can't work because they're stuck in an hotel. You just can't make it up.
What can we do about it? What is something? I mean, you're
Send
probably
all the illegal migrants back to where they came from.
Sure.
That's the way to solve the problem.
Sure. That
and
is
invest in the local, the indigenous population to get them into work.
The indigenous English.
I'm telling you, it is easier. It's more cost effective to be on the dole than it is to go to work.
Exactly. And unfortunately,
and until they can turn that round, it ain't going to change.
Thank you. Because now, whilst we talked about the illegal immigrants, I've lived in the UK. I've met families who were career dole people. The girls get pregnant at 16. That's what you do. And so on it goes.
Get houses, the lot.
Yep, exactly. So regrettably, that is quite an undercurrent in the UK. So there are many things wrong in the society. So we've touched upon at least a dozen different problems, and you could really now just say, "Oh, fuck it all." It's just but that's not how we two work. That's not how we two think. We are here because we are convinced we can make this world a better place. So, tell us a bit about the work that you are doing. That you are out there to actually say, yes, we've got all that shit happening, but at the same token, guys, don't give up. There is hope. There is help.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Well, back in the Remembrance Week, they released the figures of where the hotspots of veterans are. I went to one of my veterans groups, and the CEO of the group was there with a camera crew that were going to do a piece for the local to the evening news. To cut a long story short, they interviewed me. They came back here because I said I did the podcast and blah 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 blah. Came back here. I did. I think it was about 25-minute interview. And he used about a minute and a half clip.
It's always the same, man.
But that went out on, I thought it was just going out on the local news. It went out on the national news. And the piece they used was the piece that I said that I was struggling, and I sought help from a doctor, etc. And a guy in the Midlands, a veteran in the Midlands, saw this on the news, contacted me after. This guy hadn't left his house for almost 2 years. He was a prisoner in his own four walls. Contacted me. Did I know anybody that could help? I put him in touch with a mate of mine that's up in the Midlands. Who is an RBL, Royal British Legion caseworker, volunteer. Put him in touch. They did some work together over a couple of weeks. My mate rang me a couple of weeks later, said, look, this guy's problems are a lot more complex than my skill set is to deal with. Did I know anybody else? So I put him in touch with another group that's down here called Forgotten Veterans UK. They contacted him, convinced him that he needed to come down, and left his house for 2 years. He got on a coach, came down by himself on a coach down to Portsmouth. They picked him up, spent a weekend down there. I went and saw him on a Saturday. He thanked me for for what I'd done, and I'd done very little other than put me in touch with the right people. Had a chat with the guy that runs the thing, and he said, yes, we'll be able to help him. Now he's I think he's coming down fairly regular, getting the support and the help that he needs to get him through his problems. So
Brilliant.
without one veteran that we know off of the back of that news item. So,
but I think what you're saying there is being transparent and being open about your own struggles, and I think that is the key to us moving forward. I think it is okay that you were the tip of the spear. It is okay that you were a hard man. That was then. The hard man, that label of pride comes with a price. And that price is that you're probably shit in dealing with your own emotions and shit with your with dealing what has happened to you, what maybe you took part in, and whatever had occurred in your past, whatever gives you grief now. We're crap in talking about that. We have got the X and Y chromosome, and then you are in a role where there are no emotions. Emotions means you beat the shit out of someone. Well, that doesn't work in civilian life, and
but it's I think the first part is to recognise in yourself that you're not right, to recognise in yourself that you've got a problem. Once you can recognise that you've got a problem, then you can deal with it.
Absolutely,
you can actually do something about it.
Yeah,
and it's taking that first step in the journey to be able to put yourself right. And I mean, I've seen that, and I've done it. And I saw I wasn't right. I needed some help, and I sought it. And,
I think,
and that's what it's about. It's recognising and understand in yourself that you've got an issue. Yeah. And once you've done that, you're halfway to being well again.
And let's be quite clear, not every solution works for everyone. Okay, so no. I think you need
everybody's an individual.
Absolutely. So therefore, whatever happened to you, the key thing is that you admit to yourself, hey, I'm in trouble and I can't solve it all myself. So I think that is the start. And then I think the next step is that you actually maybe head to your GP, to your family physician, and actually just say, hey, I'm in trouble, because that doesn't cost you a thing. There it is. These guys are looking out for that. They are trained to help you in the right direction. Typically, when you're in your own darkness, you don't know what is around. And therefore, these people probably know, hey, there is that psychologist that goes through funded channels, so there's no price for you. There is that and that, and it gives you a starting point. More importantly, sometimes there are reasons that you're really fucked up in the head, and those reasons are medical. So if you're low in hemoglobin and the red color in your blood because your nutrition is shit, because you actually have no money, you're struggling financially, no surprise that you feel crap. And then that is something that a GP will pick up. So there are certain things that one can do something about very easily. Others, you need more other help. That's fair call. And again, this might be a source of information. The veterans groups, if you're a soldier, that's absolutely true. But you might be not a soldier. You might still have rip-roaring PTSD from something else that happened in your life. So again,
don't have to be in combat to see trauma.
Oh, shit, yeah. Shit, yeah. And that is so normal. So please listen to Tim and me. Trauma is normal. Shit happening to you in life is normal. Please, however dark it looks right now in your life, when is the darkest time? Just before dawn. Okay, so
There's always light at the end of the tunnel.
It is, and it sounds like such a cliche, but it is. Yeah. I have had my dark nights of the soul where I thought the world is better off without me, and many other people have that. that is actually reasonably normal. About 6%, 6 to 8% of the population in the United States will have had those thoughts within the last year. Okay?
Yeah.
So it is normal to not be okay. It's okay not to be okay. And I think that is what we want to tell you guys out there. It's not
I
okay.
think that's the main message that we can put out there.
Isn't it?
It's okay not to be okay. And if you're not okay, it's okay to go and seek some help.
Absolutely.
And that's the first key, is understand that you're not okay. And if you're not okay, there's always somebody out there that can help. And that's the first step. Recognize that, then the whole world opens up. The light's there. You can go forward. Every single journey starts with a first step. And that first step is understanding that you've got an issue. And once you understand you've got an issue, then you can do something about it. And that's what I'd like you to take away from what we're talking about today. There is help out there. There's a massive amount of help out there. And you've only got to recognise that you've got a problem and put your hand up. Take that first step on the journey to recovery.
And very, very soon, you're going to find your own tribe. Very soon, you're going to find people that are like you, that have gone through similar trauma, whatever it may be. And you will be amazed, because you would have never thought that these people who now seem to be having their act together, that they have gone maybe for something very similar to you, or even worse. But these are the people who you should surround yourself with, because they are on the same path as you, but they're just a little bit further down the road. So you don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. No, you see, well, how did you get over that? Who did you seek? Who did help you? So it is a journey that we are all on. And I invite you to come along onto this journey of transformation. It sounds like a cliche again, but I don't have better words. But I know that I have gone through a lot of shit and paid the price because I didn't behave well. I didn't do what we are now preaching. I actually thought, no, I can, with the help of vodka, I can sort that out. That was not. There's nothing wrong to have the odd glass, okay? So I have no problem with that. But the problem is when you use it. Oh, shit, when you use it every day in order to numb yourself, to escape your reality, well, that's the problem. And that's where many, many people have ended up. Guys...
It's not the answer.
Correct.
It doesn't help.
Correct. Oh, Tim, thank you so much for the time you spent with me. I'm very, very grateful for your insights, for your wise guidance there. May I ask, if people are gelling with you and want to know more about you, where can they find you?
Well, I've got a podcast. It's on all the podcast apps out there. So Spotify, Google, Amazon, Apple, the lot.
It works.
And all you need to do is put in, I think it's Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories. And there's 150 people out there that I've interviewed with some amazing stories. I do a live stream on a Thursday, which is called Everyday Conversations Regarding Mental Health. And I get guests in and we have chats like this and we look ways through for mental well-being and all that good stuff. And that's for an hour and a quarter. That starts at 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time every Thursday. I also, for fun, have a quiz, a live awesome quiz on a Tuesday. And that starts at 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And it's a lot of fun, and it takes your mind off of stuff.
Good on you. Hey guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. Everything of Tim is down there, so it's easy for you to follow through. But equally, whilst you're down there, press the like and the subscribe button, and so that you
Absolutely.
don't miss any of these beautiful interviews that I've got the honor to do. It's a fun and it's a good life when you actually allow yourself to be the real you. And yeah, I think very clearly the past does not equal the future, guys. And today's a new day. Right now is an opportunity, a privilege to change. So,
well, if I can leave one piece of advice, and that would be live every day as though it's your last, because one day it will be.
so true.
The last thing you want to do is turn up to the pearly gates with regrets that you haven't done something. With a body that you haven't worn out.
Oh, please. Absolutely. I agree. Tim, thank you so much for coming onto my show. And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with passion. Bye.
Au revoir.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Trying